In the ornate and symbolic chamber of the White House Cabinet Room, former U.S. President Donald J. Trump convened a high-profile meeting with his cabinet and key officials to address what his administration described as an urgent and growing crisis of crime in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., an event that not only underscored his administration's law and order agenda but also offered the public and the press a window into how executive leadership seeks to balance governance, political communication, and policy enforcement in moments of heightened national concern. The meeting, attended by senior officials including Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, who later held his own press briefing, became a focal point for discussion on crime crackdowns, law enforcement strategies, and federal-state cooperation, as Trump, known for his direct and sometimes combative style, articulated his vision of restoring order, security, and accountability, emphasizing that the safety of citizens is the foremost responsibility of government and must not be compromised by political hesitation or bureaucratic inefficiency. And to situate this meeting in the larger political context, one must recall that crime, particularly violent crime in major urban centers, had long been a contentious issue in American politics, often polarizing public opinion between advocates of stricter enforcement and reformers calling for systemic changes in policing, justice, and social welfare, and Trump, who campaigned on a platform of law and order, consistently leaned toward tough-on-crime rhetoric, portraying himself as a defender of ordinary Americans against chaos, disorder, and what he often labeled as failures of Democratic-led city administrations. Thus the optics of holding a cabinet-level meeting specifically addressing crime in the nation's capital carried both symbolic and substantive weight, signaling to his supporters that he was taking decisive action and sending a message to critics that his administration would not stand idly by as crime statistics drew headlines. Yet beyond the immediate political theater, the cabinet meeting also reflected the broader dynamics of executive governance, wherein the president gathers trusted advisors, assesses data and intelligence, debates potential policy responses, and ultimately seeks to project an image of control and decisiveness, even as the complexity of crime and public safety issues defies easy solutions, for crime is not merely a law enforcement problem but a deeply rooted societal phenomenon tied to poverty, inequality, education, family structures, drug abuse, and economic opportunity. And while Trump's rhetoric focused on enforcement and accountability, the broader conversation among experts often emphasized multidimensional approaches, creating a tension between the political appeal of strongman declarations and the nuanced realities of long-term crime reduction strategies. The reporters covering the event seized upon this tension, asking probing questions not only about the specifics of Trump's proposed crackdown but also about the implications for civil liberties, federal-local relations, and the broader political landscape. And Trump's responses, true to form, blended assertion, deflection, and counterattack, reaffirming his combative relationship with much of the mainstream media, yet also reinforcing his bond with supporters who admired his refusal to be cowed by critical questioning. Secretary Duffy's role in this broader event, holding a separate press conference to announce actions against states failing to enforce English language requirements for commercial drivers, added another dimension, highlighting how the Trump administration often coupled law and order messaging with broader cultural and regulatory themes, linking the idea of crime control and orderliness not only to policing but to issues of national identity, cohesion, and compliance with rules, a narrative that resonated with a base concerned about immigration, cultural change, and perceived laxity in governance. Historically, presidents have used cabinet meetings and crime crackdowns as opportunities to demonstrate leadership in moments of public anxiety, from Lyndon Johnson's Great Society-era anti-crime efforts to Bill Clinton's 1990s crime bills, and Trump's emphasis on crime in D.C. fit into this lineage while also reflecting the polarized context of the 21st century, where crime statistics, media narratives, and partisan interpretations often diverge dramatically, leaving the public struggling to discern the reality beneath the rhetoric. What made this Trump-era meeting particularly noteworthy, however, was not only the policy content but also the performative dimension of modern presidential communication, for every word, gesture, and exchange was broadcast, live-streamed, and instantly analyzed across platforms, turning governance into spectacle and policymaking into media event. And in this sense, the meeting was as much about shaping perception as about shaping policy, a fact underscored by the presence of cameras, the framing of soundbites, and the deliberate emphasis on key talking points designed to resonate with voters watching at home, whether sympathetic or skeptical. Yet one must not overlook the genuine policy implications, for a presidential directive to crack down on crime in the capital carries weight in terms of federal funding, coordination with local police, Department of Justice involvement, and possible legislative proposals, all of which can tangibly affect the lives of residents, officers, and communities. And while critics may dismiss such meetings as political theater, history shows that presidential attention to an issue often catalyzes bureaucratic action, reallocates resources, and shifts the priorities of federal agencies, thus making the words spoken in that room more than mere rhetoric, but signals of future policy trajectories. In considering the broader implications, one must also note the impact on public trust, for citizens measure their government not only by its economic or foreign policy achievements but by its ability to provide safety and order, and when crime dominates headlines, leaders are pressured to respond visibly and forcefully, lest they appear indifferent or incompetent, a dynamic Trump understood well and leveraged consistently, portraying himself as the indispensable strong leader willing to confront issues others ignored. And while supporters applauded this approach, critics cautioned that rhetoric without comprehensive policy risked oversimplifying complex problems, alienating communities, and deepening divides. Yet such criticisms did little to blunt the resonance of Trump's message with large swaths of the electorate, particularly those in suburban and rural areas concerned about urban crime spilling into their communities. Internationally, too, the emphasis on crime crackdowns projected a certain image of American governance, one that highlighted toughness, discipline, and order, qualities that aligned with Trump's broader, America First, posture, reassuring some allies of U.S. resolve while providing fodder to critics who viewed his approach as authoritarian-leaning. And thus the cabinet meeting, though ostensibly a domestic policy event, also contributed to the global perception of Trump's presidency. As the meeting concluded and coverage spread across media outlets, the dual realities of American democracy were once again on display, a president exercising the full symbolic and practical weight of executive power to address an issue of national concern, and a press corps fulfilling its duty to scrutinize, question, and interpret, ensuring that no action, however decisive, went unexamined, a dynamic that is central to the functioning of a free society and a reminder that governance is not only about the decisions made but also about the debates they spark, the narratives they shape, and the legacies they leave, which is why this particular cabinet meeting, focused on crime in D.C., remains a compelling example of how leadership, politics, media, and public policy intersect in the theater of modern democracy, where every word and action is magnified, contested, and remembered as part of the ongoing story of American governance in turbulent times.